Hello friends I made this for. My name is Lauren and today we're going to talk about what the fuck this is. So first of all, you are here because we're going to be talking about the element of earth. That's what this symbol is representing, and we're going to talk about the earth element as we see it in the tarot, but also kind of relate it back to astrology because that's what I love. Astrology right now has a lot of placements going on in earth signs, and starting next month, 2 planets are going to be making their happy way out of the sign of Capricorn, those planets being Saturn and Pluto, and making their way together in harmony, hopefully, into Aquarius. So, let's talk about it. Or at least let's talk about the element, because a lot of elements are going to be moving into air signs. I mean, planets are going to be moving into air signs. I think it's important to kind of take a step back to think about what is Earth really, especially when it comes to the tarot, because I think Earth gets a bad rap, and I also think Earth ends up being lumped into a group that doesn't always make sense, or can be rather limiting. First things first though, the decks that I'm going to be calling on to help me are going to be the Smith-Waite deck, the Wild Unknown deck, and then the Psychic Tarot for the Heart Oracle deck, which I've done a little overview about some of these cards and how to connect. If you're interested in any of these decks that I ever show, I kind of talk about how to pick your own deck anyway. Links in the description box. Please don't leave. I'm just getting started. So let's get started. One thing that I just want to mention is that the earth element is represented as a pentacle when it comes to the tarot cards. Now, in different decks, this will look different. So for the example, the Fountain Tarot calls them coins. Other decks might refer to them as stones, and though they all mean the same thing, I'm going to be sticking with cards that just use the pentacle because that to me is the most classic version, and I honestly feel is just the best representator of this element when we're looking at it through the tarot, because though we can see the pentacles as being a physical manifestation of certain themes, it's important not to limit that physicality with conflating it with money and work just strictly, because that doesn't actually help us when we're looking at different cards in the tarot. So let's talk about what it means, or where we see it, right? Because we can either see it in the minors, we might see it in the court, but ultimately this is a suit rather, that's all about a physical sort of being. It's not simply oh, this is very finite, though it can be. There's a lot of physicality to it. And it's important to remember that this physicality is something that isn't just limited to the physical, it can be felt, right? We can feel it in our physical bodies. And I think that's something that gets forgotten about a lot. I'm just grabbing some other cards, because ultimately, it's not just about how it feels. It's not just about something that we can touch. It's a lot of different things. So let's talk about it, shall we? First, when we look at anything with the pentacles, what's really important to recognize is there's that earth element. So we're thinking about things that we can touch, things that we can feel, things that we can measure with numbers in a way. We can count how many jars of something are available to us. We can look at our bank account and see what resources are within our reach. When we look at this earth element, it's things that are very much more tangible. When we talk about things like the rods or the swords or the cups, we're talking about mental, emotional, and creative elements. But when we get to this suit in the minors or in the royalty of the tarot, we see this transition to something that is tangible. So this is really important, right? Ace of Pentacles is the pure energy of that element. So this is kind of our helper of getting connected to what is the earth element about, right? So when we're looking at these different cards, and there's a lot of things that we can connect together, we can also see that there are certain themes. So let's look at 3 different versions of the same card, right? I want to start with the 4 of Pentacles because this is a card that gets a bad rap. There is this representation of the 4 of Pentacles, and this is someone guarding their resources. We can see that these resources are all tied together by a string, maybe creating some sort of tension. And then, of course, within this oracle deck that's also a tarot deck, the 4 of Pentacles is related as opening up, more of an invitation to do that, which is a fun way of looking at this card. Because in the most classic version, this can seem like it's restraining, not wanting to share with others, and that might be a symbol that comes to you. But then when we move on later, we see this connection to giving and receiving. So there's a lot of change that happens between these two, right? But the reality is, the underlying theme is there's a physical aspect to it. Whether we should be giving and receiving or opening up, which again, this deck, this is the same card, but in this version, giving and receiving, there's a physical action that's being asked of us, right? Even if it's not completely overt, there is a physical action taking place. There's tension here because all the resources are being tied together. And when you are looking at your cards within this suit, I do like looking at the Pentacles as our resources. The 9 of Pentacles is one of my favorite cards in the tarot, and I think this is another good representation. There's a physical connection to the earth. There's a physical connection to this reality that this woman is, well, person is existing in. So if this suit comes up and you're having a hard time connecting with it, it's because we're being asked to do something or relate back to something within the physical world. It's touchy, touchy, touchy. Not so much always feely, though what we feel in our body is real and definitely connected to that aspect of the element, right? So as we see with a lot of cards in this version of the suit, we see a really interesting connection to that physicality, right? Find balance is the representation for this card, and I think that's pretty nice because it kind of gives us some connection to what we already see here. Again, balance within our physical world might be a big one. This one is literally showing us different pictures of things around us, but if we're relating it back to the element of earth, think of it as how are we balancing our physical self, our physical self, or things within the physical world that require some balancing. But how do we relate this back to, let's say, the court cards, right? So the thing about the court cards is there's a lot of representation here. I love that in the court cards for the Pentacles in the Wild Unknown, they're all deer, because that really comes off as a really earthly being, an earthly element. So this is Daughter of Pentacles, and this is Knight of Pentacles. Page might be more related to Daughter though, so here's your combo, your cute little buddies. Another thing that is associated with this element is the need to take it slow. This is the only knight in all of the knights of the court cards that is staying still. So there is a idea with the earth element that it's an invitation to also move slower, maybe more diligently, more intentionally. These are big themes when it comes to our work with the earth element. Earth moves at its own pace. Nature moves at its own pace. And so if we get the Knight of Pentacles, we might be being asked to slow the fuck down. And that's a really good reminder, right? We might really need to slow down and see for ourselves what things feel, sound, and look like. Think back to the last 3 years. Saturn has been in Capricorn. My Capricorn, my Saturn, my. And we've been having Pluto in Capricorn for a long time too. As we're moving through all of these elements in the sky, we might be feeling that our structures are also at place. So that's another one too. Structures in our physical world are not always physical, right? So that's a big one with this element too. See, there's many facets to the earth element. It's the physical, but it's also the structures within our minds. So when it comes to this idea of structure, here's some 2 cards that really seem interesting to me as far as relating to that idea of what structure looks like. These are 2 totally different cards, but they do represent some sort of structure. This one being a structure of how can we work together, and this structure, the work that we create, the work that we do, the structures that we physically build. And so what's interesting when we think about what we physically build, a lot of the times what we physically build might not actually be physical. We might put together a class, we might be putting together a business, and though that business might have a structure in which it lives in, we have to create our own structures as individuals, relating back to how we can work and how we function best in a system that fulfills our needs and perhaps the needs of our clientele. So, with that said, there's some more medicine here as far as the idea of structure. Structures are not always what we see. It is the structures in which we exist in, right? So, there's a lot of good medicine when it comes to the physicality. This is our final little buddy, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep. I forget because there's 2 pentacles inside the center. So again, we see a really great connection to we can look at it as ideas around wholeness. We can look at it as ideas around, don't judge me because I know the numbers up there. Some of you are probably thinking, what the fuck, Lauren? Shut up, shut up. I'm doing the best I can. I never learned how to read this, okay? I went to public school in Texas. Stop judging me. Thank you. So when we're looking at structures, this can also be referring to our house or our home. When we look at the 10 of Pentacles, that's usually what people think about, is coming home to oneself or completing this idea of what home looks like. So those are other aspects in which the physical can come out in our earth connection, right? This is the Ace of Pentacles in this deck, and it's strengthening bonds. So this can also be the structures within our friends, our families, our relations. So I'm sharing all this because there's a lot to unpack as we move out of this age of Capricorn into a quote-unquote age of Aquarius, but don't expect it to be fancy, y'all. It might be more confusing than it is structurally sound. You thought it was gonna be fun. But it might not. I don't actually know. I'm not a fucking psychic either. But the idea of connecting with Earth and kind of connecting with this element in the tarot is we have to stop looking at things strictly as like a money base or physical touchy-touchy. We're talking about the earth element. It actually is a lot of different things, such as, like I said, slowing down. It can be money, it can be work, but it can also be the physical, non-physical, such as our structures. Another thing as well to relate back to this element, these cards, especially if we're talking about court cards, is we might be feeling things in our bodies. So body stuff is also really big here. We might be feeling big things in our bodies. Here is the Five of Pentacles in this deck, which I'm not sure how well I feel about it, but either way, it can be what is felt in our body, right? It can also be the dedicated effort, such as what we saw in this version of the card, dedicated effort to create something in our lives. So maybe a job, maybe that means pursuing education. When we talk about the earth element in the tarot, it's so immersive and expansive. And I feel like the reason I'm sharing it is because sometimes it doesn't get that. It doesn't get that feeling. It doesn't get that connection. But it's about the physical work that we've been doing, right? That's another really big thing. This is why I'm sharing the Nine of Pentacles here, is because well-deserved reward is also a big thing that we can feel in our bodies, we can have worked towards. It's important medicine. So with that said, I hope that helps in case you are looking at the element of earth and thinking, oh, it's this. Well, guess what? It's fucking not. So I hope that helps or maybe confuses you more. Either way, thank you, friends, for coming by and exploring the earth element with me. I myself am a Virgo moon, Capricorn sun, and that means I'm earthy as fuck, bitches. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time.